There are 8 planets in the solar system, and all of them are very different. They're of different sizes, they're different distances from the sun. Some of them are made up of gas, others are small and rocky. But one thing is the same, they're all round. So the question is, why aren't they shaped like pyramids, disks, or cubes? Most planets appear when material in space starts clumping together. After some time, a planet accumulates enough stuff to develop powerful gravity, and gravity is what keeps things together in space. Now, a planet's gravity pulls with the same amount of force from all sides. That's why the overall shape of planets is a sphere. But is it necessary for a planet to be shaped like a sphere? Could, for example, a donut-shaped planet exist out there? According to the laws of physics, it's possible. But such a planet is very unlikely to appear naturally. Plus, it's not clear if toroid planets could be stable. Anyway, let's imagine what our life would be like if our Earth was shaped like a donut. It would most likely have the same position relative to the sun, as well as the same axial tilt. People would still be able to send rockets to space, but they would only do it at the equator of the donut. It would be the best place to break free of our planet's gravitational clutches. Now, gravity would be a bit messed up on this donut-shaped Earth, and your weight would depend on where exactly you are on the planet. In some places, your weight could be up to 3 times smaller than usual. Our regular round Earth has surface gravity equal to 1g, but the surface gravity on the donut Earth would be 0.65 g along the poles and a mere 0.3 g at the equator. Walking there would feel like walking on the surface of Mars. But even though the donut-shaped Earth would have weaker gravity, the planet would still be trying to collapse in on itself. In other words, it would constantly fight the urge to become sphere-shaped. To avoid changing its shape, our planet would have to spin much faster than it does now. This way, centrifugal forces would keep the hole in the donut intact. But this super-fast rotation would influence the length of a day on Earth. It would only last 2 hours and 50 minutes. Or if we decided to stick to a good old 24-hour-long day, we'd have at least 8 sunrises and sunsets a day. So, we'd have to adapt to working throughout days and nights and sleeping while it's still light outside. It would definitely mess with our biological clock. But it would be even worse for animals whose lives are mostly synced to the patterns of the moon and the sun. They migrate, hunt, and breed based on these patterns. Speaking of the moon, what would happen to the natural satellite of the donut-shaped Earth? Well, we'd still have it. That's the good news. But it would probably be pulled toward the hole and keep bobbing up and down in the middle of our planet. On the other hand, it might get affected by the gravity produced by the planet's outer edges and move around Earth following a figure-8 orbit. But there's also some bad news. Any of these orbits would affect tides on Earth, wreaking havoc on the planet. Oceans would have unstable water levels, and people would be unable to build coastal cities. It's hard to predict in which regions people would live on the donut-shaped Earth. Most likely the donut hole would be lined with mountains, larger than anything we have on our planet today. But if you decided to live on the edge of the donut-shaped Earth, you'd enjoy awesome views every day. The history of the donut-shaped Earth would also be different. Humans would never cross the ocean. They would develop separately on different continents. On the bright side, no areas of the planet would be too extreme for people to survive, so there wouldn't be any mass extinctions.
An exoplanet is any planet inside our solar system. Some of them are free-floating. Those are called rogue planets. They move around the galactic center. Others orbit their host star, or two. For the first time, astronomers discovered exoplanets in the 1990s. Since then, scientists have found thousands of them. And now, you can sneak a peek too. Spoiler alert, some exoplanets are pretty bizarre. Others resemble our home planet and could probably support life. The closest to Earth exoplanet is Proxima Centauri b. It's a mere 4.2 light-years away from Earth. Recently, astronomers have found out that this world might resemble Earth even more than previously thought. It's only 17% more massive than our home planet. It orbits a star that is dimmer and less massive than the Sun. Proxima Centauri b is in the middle of the star's habitable zone. This means that chances are liquid water and life might exist on the planet. It looks like the exoplanet is tidally locked with its parent star. This means one of its sides faces the star at all times, and the other is always in the darkness. Scientists haven't figured out yet whether the planet has an atmosphere. It's traveling too close to its star and completes one orbit within 11 Earth days. The radiation from the star might be pulling the planet's air away. If this is the case, Proxima Centauri b isn't likely to have liquid water on its surface. Gliese 832c is 16 light-years away from Earth. In the cosmic scheme of things, it's a stone's throw away. This exoplanet is 5 times as massive as Earth and travels much closer to its parent star. That's why a year on this planet lasts a mere 36 days. But since this star is a red dwarf, much cooler and dimmer than the Sun, Gliese 832c gets as much light and heat as our planet does. At the same time, it's still unclear if Gliese 832c is similar to Earth. It probably has a much thicker atmosphere that creates a runaway greenhouse effect. This phenomenon occurs when a planet absorbs more heat from its host star than it can release back into space. This means that Gliese 832c is more likely to resemble scorching hot Venus rather than relatively cool Earth. Another Earth-like planet, TOI 700d, is 100 light-years away from us in the constellation Dorado. It orbits a small and rather cool dwarf star that is about 40% of the mass and size of the Sun. Its surface temperature is half as high as that of our star. The outermost planet, which is the very TOI 700d, is almost the size of Earth. It also sits in the habitable zone of its parent star. No flares from TOI 700 reach the planet. This increases the chances of the exoplanet being habitable. This means it can potentially develop and maintain life. Scientists don't know for sure the exact conditions on the surface of the planet, but one of the computer simulations they've created shows a planet covered with an ocean. It has a very dense atmosphere dominated by carbon dioxide. Astronomers think a similar atmosphere surrounded Mars when it was a young planet. But another 3D model shows TOI 700d as an all-land, cloudless world. That's what our Earth would probably look like if it wasn't covered with oceans. Winds on TOI 700d move away from the night side of the planet and meet in the area that directly faces the star. There is an exoplanet that stands out among the rest because of its awesome magenta color. You can find this world in the Virgo constellation. The planet is called Gliese 504b. The distance between this planet and its parent star is 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet formed relatively recently and is still glowing with heat. That's why its surface looks pinkish. Just 20 light-years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming our home Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. When it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf, which is an object too large to be a planet and too small to be a star. But later, scientists received proof that the space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet of the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptional strong magnetic field helps the planet produce the auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create these light shows. If you traveled 20,000 light-years away from Earth, you'd come close to a red dwarf in the Sagittarius constellation. Such stars are very cool and small. Quite far away from this cold star, there's a planet. The distance between this world and its host star is so great that the planet receives very little heat. It's one of the coldest planets ever detected. The average surface temperature on the planet is lower than -360 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why the entire planet is covered with a thick layer of ice. If you stepped onto its surface, you'd see nothing but glaciers, plains, and mountains of ice. And still, astronomers claim life might exist deep beneath the frozen surface. All because the core of the planet is likely to generate enough heat to melt some of its inner ice. In this case, there would be an enormous subsurface ocean, maybe even swarming with bizarre life forms on the planet. One of the oldest exoplanets we know about is PCR B162026b. It's about 12.7 billion years old. It's almost 3 times as old as Earth, which appeared 4.5 billion years ago. This also means that the Genesis planet formed only about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 parent stars have had enough time to evolve into a white dwarf and a pulsar, making almost 100 revolutions per second. Sunrises on this planet must look awesome. I bet the next exoplanet isn't like any other you might have seen before. It's often called Super Saturn or Saturn on steroids. That's because J1407b has a colossal system of rings. They're 640 times as large as those of Saturn. The bizarre world is 434 light-years away from Earth. It's the only planet we know about that has rings similar to Saturn's. If you moved J1407b to our solar system and replaced Saturn with it, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. Astronomers have noticed a gap halfway through the planet's rings. The chances are high that an exomoon the size of Mars orbits the planet somewhere within this gap. If you lived on this moon, you'd have an awesome view every time you looked up into the sky. This exoplanet, called WASP-12b, munches on the light coming from its star. It's one of the darkest worlds people know about. All because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The planet is giant, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light that reaches its atmosphere. This is likely to be the main reason for the insane temperatures on the surface of the planet. They can rise up to 4,600 degrees Fahrenheit. It's almost half as hot as the surface of the Sun. WASP-12b travels so close to its host star that it needs just 1 day to complete one orbit. Its night side isn't as hot as the day side, a mere 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of this difference in temperature, water vapor and clouds gather above the surface of the planet. From time to time, swirls of material from the planet's superheated atmosphere spill onto its star. About 4,000 light-years away from Earth, there's an exoplanet that might be one enormous diamond. It's 5 times the size of our planet, but needs only 2 hours and 10 minutes to orbit its parent star. It's a pulsar rotating at a rate of 10,000 times a minute. The planet is denser than any other we've discovered so far. It consists mostly of carbon, which is so dense that astronomers think it might be crystalline. If it was true, it could mean that at least some part of the planet is diamond. On WASP-76b, it rains iron on the night side of the planet, and the temperature on the daytime side rises up to 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to vaporize most metals. This exoplanet is a bit smaller than Jupiter and located 640 light-years away from Earth. Such terrifying weather conditions in this world are caused by its unusual orbit. The distance between WASP-76b and its parent star is 10 times shorter than the distance between Mercury and the Sun. That's why the star and the huge planet are tidally locked. One side of WASP-76b always faces the star, and the other side is always pitch black. This bright blue exoplanet sits 62 years away from Earth. A bit larger than Jupiter, it looks calm and peaceful. Its blue color might remind you of our home planet. But this familiar appearance conceals the planet's horrifying nature. The beautiful hue comes from silicate atoms and particles that make up the atmosphere. But the wind speed on the planet can reach 5,400 miles per hour. That's 7 times the speed of sound. The temperature there can rise up to 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. But this isn't the worst. In this bizarre world, it rains glass, sideways. So it's probably not the place where you'd like to spend your vacation.
This star is in its T-Tauri phase. It's surrounded by a giant donut-shaped disk of dust and gas circles. Most of the material in the disk falls back onto the star, but some dust particles crash into one another. If the collision is relatively gentle, they clump into much larger objects. At first, these objects are no larger than the width of a strand of human hair. With time, dust clumps turn into pebbles. Pebbles become large rocks. The gas helps these rocks stick together, and while some of the bigger objects break apart, most of them turn into the building blocks of future planets, planetesimals. While orbiting the star, the planetesimals clear all the material away from their path. All that is left behind is just some fine dust. Billions of years later, the disk surrounding the star completely transforms. It's now colder and farther away from the heat of its parent star. The water it contains can finally freeze, and tiny particles of ice are now traveling around the star along with the dust. With time, they form snowballs that later turn into giant planetary cores. And since these regions of space are colder, gas molecules there slow down and get drawn into this core. Astronomers believe that's how gas giants like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune are formed. Interestingly, Jupiter and Saturn were the first planets to form in the solar system. It took them a mere 10 million years or so. Closer to the star, other planets begin to appear. Those are rocky planets like Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. Such space bodies can take tens of millions of years to form after their star is born. After planets start orbiting their star, they are referred to as a planetary system. This system can consist of one or several planets and include natural satellites, asteroids, dwarf planets, meteoroids, and comets. The Sun and the 8 planets orbiting it are known as the Solar System. The closest planet to the Sun is Mercury. The place looks eerily similar to the Moon, Earth's natural satellite. But from up close, it becomes clear that it's just an illusion. Mercury is one of the 4 rocky planets of the Solar System. It has a solid surface. All over the place there are craters created by space rocks. Mercury is the smallest of all the 4 inner planets. It's just 3,000 miles at the equator. If you decided to see the entire Mercury, it would take you about 2.5 days to drive all the way around the planet. That is, if you were driving your car at a speed of 50 miles per hour without stopping. But driving there wouldn't be a simple task. The planet's surface is littered with gigantic hills with steep slopes. Some of them reach a height of 2 miles. Mercury doesn't have an atmosphere, and the temperatures on the planet are extreme. 800 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and minus 290 degrees at night. It's also the second densest planet in the solar system, topped only by Earth. Mercury has a massive metallic core. It takes up almost 85% of the planet's volume. The core alone contains more iron than any other planet of the solar system. Not so long ago, astronomers discovered that Mercury might have not only the outer core, which consists of liquid metal, but also a solid inner core. The planet's outer shell is composed of a rocky mantle and solid crust, which is just 300 to 400 miles thick. Instead of an atmosphere, Mercury has a thin exosphere. It's made up of mostly oxygen, sodium, hydrogen, helium, and potassium. But the planet is too close to the Sun. That's why the solar wind and striking meteoroids keep sweeping away the atoms of this exosphere. Now, Venus is very different from the bluish planet you might have seen in pictures. It's surrounded by a super-dense atmosphere made up of carbon dioxide. If you decided to land on the planet's surface, you'd have an opportunity to observe thick clouds of sulfuric acid pass by. By the way, if you need a drink on Venus, be sure to only drink H2O. If you drink H2O2, well, that'll be your last drink. The planet's surface is actually reddish-brown. Venus is a dry and hot place, with a pressure 90 times greater than that on Earth. Flat, smooth plains cover 2/3 of the planet's surface. But there are also large mountains. Those are volcanoes. Most of them are extinct, but some might still be active. Venus has two vast highland areas the size of South America and Australia, and several expansive lowlands. There are also long, winding canals. They're old lava flows, and some of them reach 3,000 miles in length. The planet's dense atmosphere creates a greenhouse effect, similar to that on Earth. It traps heat, and temperatures on Venus rise up to 880 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to melt lead. The pressure on the planet's surface is the same as at a depth of 3,000 feet underwater on Earth, crushing. The planet's metallic iron core is 2,400 miles wide. That's almost as much as the distance from New York to Los Angeles. The next layer is a molten rocky mantle that's 1,200 miles thick. Venus's insides are covered with a crust. It consists mostly of basalt and is 6 to 12 miles wide. The planet's thick atmosphere is nightmarish. It's 96% of carbon dioxide with 3% of nitrogen and thick clouds of sulfuric acid. Earth is the third planet from the Sun. From space, it looks like a blue marble with areas of green, yellow, brown, and white swirls. All that blue area is water. It covers 71% of our planet's surface. Even from up there, you'd spot the Great Barrier Reef near the shores of Australia. It stretches for 1,600 miles. That's more than the distance from Boston to Miami. From space, you could also see all the 277 miles of the Grand Canyon at once. Earth is the densest planet in the solar system. At its center, there's a core that takes up 15% of the planet's volume. The core consists of two parts, the outer and inner core. The inner core is a solid ball made of iron and nickel. Its radius is 760 miles. That's 20% of the entire Earth's radius, or 70% of the Moon's radius. The 1,500-mile thick outer core is liquid. It also contains iron and nickel, but it's not under enough pressure to be solid. The temperature at the boundary of our planet's inner and outer core is 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's as hot as the surface of the Sun. And the pressure there is 3.3 million times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. The mantle surrounds the outer core. This layer is about 1,800 miles thick and makes nearly 84% of the entire Earth's volume. It consists of silicate rocks rich in iron and magnesium. The crust is a relatively thin layer that takes up only 1% of the Earth's volume. Along with the upper part of the mantle, it's broken into tectonic plates. They move as fast as your fingernails grow and let heat escape from the Earth's interior. The crust is mostly made up of oxygen, silicon, aluminum, iron, and other minerals. The fourth planet from the Sun is Mars. It's the last of the inner planets. They're also called terrestrial, since they're made up of rocks and metals. This place is freezing cold. The temperatures here drop down to minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Even from afar, the planet looks reddish. It's mostly because the ground there is covered with rusty-colored dust. The same fine dust is floating in the air. Mars is full of colors: golden, brown, tan, and even greenish hues. They depend on the minerals that make up the soil. The size of the dust layer varies from area to area, but in most places it's 7 feet thick. The planet's surface is rocky. It's covered with dry lake beds, craters, volcanoes, and canyons. The tallest planetary mountain in the solar system, Olympus Mons, is on Mars. It's 2.5 times higher than Mount Everest and about the size of Arizona if you stretched a tape measure across it. Martian atmosphere is much thinner than Earth's and contains 95% carbon dioxide and a mere 1% of oxygen. Dust storms sometimes cover the entire planet, and the largest ones can even be seen from Earth. Mars has a core that's made mostly of iron, nickel, and sulfur. It's between 900 and 1,200 miles wide. The core doesn't move. That's why Mars doesn't have a planet-wide magnetic field. The mantle surrounding the core is composed of thick silicates, oxygen, and some minerals. You can probably compare it with soft, rocky toothpaste. Mars's mantle is also much thinner than Earth's. It's just 800 to 1,100 miles thick. The thin planet's crust consists of volcanic basalt rock. Astronomers think it isn't broken into tectonic plates and remains in one piece. The crust is covered with fine reddish dust that looks like talcum powder. Moving on, Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. It's more than 89,000 miles wide at the equator. Jupiter is so huge it could fit 1,300 Earths inside it. It's also terrifyingly hot, about 43,000 degrees at the core. It's impossible to land on the planet. Jupiter is a gas giant with an atmosphere made up of hydrogen and helium gas. It's hidden away by a layer of thick brown, yellow, red, and white clouds. They make the planet look colorful and beautifully striped. One of the most unusual phenomena on Jupiter is the Great Red Spot. That's an enormous spinning storm the size of our home planet. It's been raging for the last 360 years. The hurricane's color varies from pale salmon and white to dark brick red. It's extremely windy on Jupiter, with wind speeds ranging from 200 to 400 miles per hour. Like I said, Jupiter is a gas giant. If the planet was 80 times as massive as it is now, it would have a chance to turn into a tiny red dwarf star. It's still unclear whether the planet's core is a molten ball of liquid or a solid rock 14 to 18 times the mass of Earth. There's even some evidence that the gas giant's core might be melting right at this moment. Whatever the truth is, the temperatures at the center of Jupiter reach 63,000 degrees. Around 90% of the planet's atmosphere is hydrogen. The remaining 10% is made up of helium with tiny traces of other gases. Under immense atmospheric pressure, hydrogen and helium gases turn into a dense fluid. Closer to the core, this liquid becomes a mixture of metallic hydrogen and helium. Since there's no solid ground on the planet, astronomers define the planet's surface as the point where the atmospheric pressure equals that on Earth. You wouldn't be able to stand on that surface, though. It's just another layer of gases. But the gravitational pull there is more than 2.5 times more powerful than on our planet. Now, like Jupiter, Saturn doesn't have any solid surface. This planet's made up of mostly hydrogen and helium. If you visited it, you would notice that the temperature and density on Saturn change the deeper you go. If you wanted to step on Saturn's surface, you just fall into the planet. Its gravity is similar to that on Earth, and the density at the surface is very low. That's why you'd free fall until the ever-increasing pressure crushed you. Now from above, it looks as if the gas giant does have a surface. The seemingly solid yellowish-brown sphere is surrounded by layers of clouds. The visible outer layer is ammonia clouds. Under them, there are hydrosulfide clouds, and the innermost layer is made up of clouds of water. Saturn is an extremely windy place. Wind speeds here reach 1,100 miles per hour at the equator. For comparison, the fastest wind speeds on Earth don't exceed 250 miles per hour. Saturn is mostly composed of hydrogen and helium, with some traces of methane, ammonia, and water. But it contains more sulfur than Jupiter, which gives the planet a smog-like orange hue. The atmosphere of Saturn isn't really different from its surface, but the deeper you go, the higher the pressure is. At some point, it makes hydrogen turn into a liquid. Further to the center of the planet, this liquefied gas turns into metallic hydrogen. Like Jupiter, Saturn might have a rocky core with hydrogen and helium surrounding it. On the other hand, even if it's made up of rocky material, the core can still be liquid. One of the most recognizable features of Saturn is its awesome gray, beige, and tan rings. These groups of tiny ringlets are made of chunks of rock and ice. Saturn also has 53 confirmed and named moons. Another 29 moons are still waiting confirmation of discovery and official names. Titan, an icy world bigger than our moon and even Mercury, is the largest of Saturn's moons. Saturn is the least dense planet in the solar system. It has 1/8 the average Earth's density. If you found a pool of water huge enough to fit the ringed planet, it would float on the surface. And still, because of its large volume, the planet is 95 times more massive than Earth. Out further, a blue-green ball of ice and gas 1.7 billion miles away from the Sun is Uranus. This ice giant has such a beautiful hue thanks to the light from the Sun. It gets reflected off the planet's surface. The planet isn't solid. If a small asteroid collided with Uranus, it would simply fly through the upper atmosphere and sink into the icy liquid center. Now, Uranus orbits the Sun on its side. It's the only planet with its axis pointing almost directly at our star. It might be because of a collision with a large space body soon after the formation of the planet. In summer, extreme storms shake the planet. Such hurricanes only occur when Uranus is heated to its most. A hurricane can sometimes spread for over 6,000 miles. That's almost the distance between Japan and the US. The planet has two sets of rings. The inner system consists of 9 narrow dark rings, and the outer rings are bright, one blue and one red. At the very center of Uranus, there's a rocky core. It's small, just half of Earth's mass. Compared to other planets, Uranus's core is rather cool, a mere 9,000 degrees. An ice mantle surrounds the solid core. It takes about 80% of the planet's volume. It's not the ice you might be thinking about. It's a hot, dense fluid made up of water, ammonia ice, and methane. Sometimes it gets referred to as a water-ammonia ocean. Uranus's atmosphere is mostly hydrogen and helium. The planet looks blue-green because of methane gas that absorbs the red light. Now, the farthest planet from the Sun, Neptune, is only 4 times the size of Earth, but 17 times as heavy. The blue surface you see in pictures is actually a layer of swirling gas and permanent clouds. The planet's mantle, which is made up of water, ammonia, and methane ices, is the closest thing Neptune has to a surface. And still, this surface isn't solid. If you made a decision to get down to the very core of the planet, you'd feel great temperature changes. It would vary from minus 340 degrees at the surface to more than 12,000 degrees at the core. Such mind-boggling temperature differences create powerful storms whose speeds reach 1,200 miles per hour. No wonder Neptune is considered the windiest planet in the solar system. Like Uranus, Neptune is an ice giant. The planet's core is solid and consists mostly of iron and some other metals. Its mass is 1.2 times greater than that of Earth. Astronomers also believe that at a depth of 6,200 miles, there might be a layer where it rains diamond crystals. The planet's core is surrounded by a large mantle. It's a superheated region of liquid with temperatures as high as 3,000 to 8,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The mantle is rich in methane, ammonia, and water, and equals up to 15 of Earth's masses. Neptune's atmosphere forms 5 to 10% of the planet's mass. It stretches 20% of the way down to Neptune's core. The atmosphere consists of 80% hydrogen, 19% helium, and a bit of methane gas. The methane gas is what gives the planet its bluish hue. But what do planets look like outside our solar system? Are they the same as our rocky worlds and gas giants? Well, some of them are pretty bizarre. We're now 40 light-years away from Earth, near an exoplanet called GJ 1214b. By the way, an exoplanet is any planet outside the solar system. It's about 3 times the size of our planet, but its mass is 8 times that of Earth. Once every 38 Earth hours, GJ 1214b orbits a red dwarf star. The temperatures on the surface of the planet are literally toasty, around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's not the only thing that makes this planet so unusual. After observing this distant world through the Hubble Space Telescope, astronomers have calculated that GJ 1214b is a giant water world. It's encapsulated by a steamy and dense atmosphere. There's no other planet like that known to people. Because of the high pressure and high temperatures on the surface of the planet, such exotic materials as superfluid water and hot ice might have formed there. Meanwhile, this bright blue exoplanet is located 62 light-years away from Earth. It looks peaceful and slightly familiar. It's a bit larger than Jupiter, and its bluish color might remind you of our home planet. But this pretty appearance hides the planet's terrifying nature. Its beautiful hue comes from silicate atoms and particles that make up the planet's atmosphere. At the same time, the wind speeds there can reach a terrifying 5,400 miles per hour. That's 7 times the speed of sound. Temperatures on the planet are also extreme, over 1,600 degrees. But even this is not the worst. It rains glass sideways in this scorching hot world. If such a storm happened at the equator on Earth, it would only need around 5 hours to travel around the planet and destroy everything in its path. Several years ago, astronomers discovered a planet as large as Neptune, and it orbits a star that's no bigger than Earth. That's a truly strange setup since usually stars are way bigger than the planets traveling around them. What might explain this phenomenon is that the star we're talking about is not so much of a star anymore. It's a teeny white dwarf with a very tricky name. This dwarf is more of a stellar skeleton. It can't fuse elements within its core, which could prevent it from gravitational collapse. These days, it's a highly compressed, smoldering space body with an insane temperature of 49,500 degrees. In other words, the star is so hot that it's slowly vaporizing the nearby planet. Because of this insane heat, the planet is losing its atmosphere. The white-hot star is sending streams of vaporized material far away from the planet at a rate of about 260 million tons a day. Far-away Neptune-sized exoplanet Gliese 436b is a paradox. It's made of scorching hot ice. It's located 30 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Leo. The planet completes one full orbit around the red dwarf Gliese 436 in just 2 days. It means it's traveling remarkably close to its parent star. The distance between them is 15 times smaller than the distance between Mercury and the Sun. That might be the reason why the planet's temperatures rarely drop below 800 degrees Fahrenheit. But the strangest thing? The planet hosts huge volumes of water ice known as Ice X, and it remains solid despite blistering temperatures. One of the most plausible explanations for this phenomenon is the incredibly strong gravity on the planet. It compresses the trace amounts of water vapor in the atmosphere into ice and then stops it from melting. Now, about 4,000 light-years away from Earth, there's a planet that seems to be one enormous diamond. The planet is 5 times the size of Earth. It needs only 2 hours and 10 minutes to orbit its parent star, which is a pulsar rotating 10,000 times in a minute. The planet is denser than any other discovered so far and consists mostly of carbon. It's so dense that astronomers think this carbon might be crystalline, meaning that at least some part of the planet is diamond. Now, look at this hot Jupiter. That's the name used to describe planets orbiting their home stars uncomfortably close. On WASP 76b, it rains iron at night. As for the daytime side of this planet, the temperatures there rise up to 4,300 degrees. That's hot enough to vaporize metal. The bizarre planet is just a bit smaller than Jupiter. It's located 640 light-years away from our home planet. The terrifying weather conditions in this world are caused by its extreme orbit. WASP 76b is 10 times closer to its parent star than Mercury is to the Sun. It makes this star and the huge planet tidally locked. One of the sides of WASP 76b is always baking in the heat coming from the star, and eternal night reigns on the other side. Now, a mere 20 light-years away from the Sun, a bizarre rogue planet is roaming the Milky Way. This planet doesn't have a star of its own, but this nomadic world has an insanely powerful magnetic field. According to a 2018 study, it's 4 million times stronger than Earth's magnetic field. The exponent, with a long and complicated name, also produces amazing auroras. When SIMP was first discovered in 2016, astronomers thought they had spotted a brown dwarf. That's an object that's too large to be a planet and too small to be a star. But another study proved that the thing was small enough to be considered a planet. Of course, this planet is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times the radius of the largest planet of the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times its mass. Astronomers say that the exceptionally powerful magnetic field helps the planet produce such stunning auroras, but they are generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. The scientists claim SIMP's moon might help the planet create its light shows. This planet is nothing like you've seen before. It's often referred to as a super Saturn or Saturn on steroids, all because J1407b has a huge system of rings. They're 640 times larger than those on Saturn. This exoplanet sits 434 light-years away from Earth. It's the only known world with rings similar to those on Saturn. If J1407b ever swapped places with Saturn, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. Astronomers have noticed a gap halfway through the planet's rings. The chances are high that an exomoon the size of Mars orbits the planet somewhere within this gap. If you lived on this moon, you'd have an awesome view every time you looked up into the sky. Gliese 581c is located 20 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Libra. It orbits its home star at a distance that is a mere 7% of the 93 million miles that separate Earth from the Sun. Gliese 581c is tidally locked with its star. It means that one of its sides always faces the star, and the other is plunged into endless darkness. Of the sunny side, the temperatures are insanely high, and the dark side is freezing. But between these two extreme areas, there's a narrow zone with the conditions that could potentially support life. And how about visiting a planet where it might rain sapphires and rubies? Hat P7b is a pretty far away place. The planet sits more than 1,000 light-years away from Earth. On its night side, the atmosphere contains a lot of aluminum oxide, also called corundum, and corundum gems are sapphires and rubies. Astronomers think there might be powerful storms on the planet when it literally rains rubies and sapphires. That's why these gems might be scattered all over the planet. There's also a planet that eats up light. It's called WASP-12b. It's one of the darkest exoplanets we know about. That's because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The planet is enormous, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light falling into its atmosphere. This might be the reason for the insane temperatures there, 4,600 degrees Fahrenheit. WASP-12b travels so close to its parent star that it completes one orbit within a day. Its night side is twice as cool as the day side, a mere 2,200 degrees. But thanks to this difference in temperature, water vapor and clouds form above the surface of the planet, and then swirls of material from WASP-12b's superheated atmosphere spill onto its star. Now, see that jaw-dropping magenta-colored exoplanet? It's located in the constellation of Virgo. It's called Gliese 504b. The distance between this planet and its home star is 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet is relatively newly formed. It's still glowing with heat. That's what makes its surface look pink. We've traveled 20,000 light-years and reached a red dwarf in the Sagittarius constellation. Far away from this cold star, there is a planet with another long and tricky name I'm not going to attempt. This world is so far away from its parent star that it receives very little heat. It's one of the coldest planets we know about. Its surface temperature is lower than minus 360 degrees. That's why the entire planet is encased in a thick layer of ice. If you stepped on its surface, you'd see nothing but glaciers, vast plains, canyons, and mountains of ice. And still, astronomers think life could exist deep beneath the chillingly cold frozen surface. The planet's core might generate enough heat to melt some of the inner ice. If it's true, then there can be an enormous subsurface ocean on the planet. Okay, here you are in the middle of the ocean. It's endless, but you can't see it because there's a thick fog all around you. Dense clouds hide the huge but dim sun. Is it day or night? You don't know. There's only a gray haze around you. You're alone. Even if you try to swim down, after several hours, you still won't be able to see the bottom of the ocean. And that's a typical water planet for you. I know, sounded kind of dark, but it's not that bad. These water worlds are more interesting than they may seem, so let's take a look at them. The ocean planet is a planet that consists, as you might have guessed, mainly of water, ice, and maybe some rocks. Think of the Earth's oceans. Its horrifying depths, the Mariana Trench, and all that. And now, can you guess how much space all the water on Earth takes up? 0.025%. Exactly. Now, just try to imagine a world of 40 to 60% water. If you dive in there, the depth can exceed 60 miles. Compared to that, the 6-mile depth of our Mariana Trench sounds like nothing. And yeah, the pressure there will be enormous. It can reach up to 20,000 Earth atmospheres. Very crushing. Now, it may sound scary, but it still would be great to find out more about these planets. Fortunately, according to scientists' calculations, there may be a lot of such planets in our galaxy alone. Well, you don't have to go far. You can find these water guys even in our solar system. Not planets, of course, but moons. Jupiter has Ganymede and Callisto, and Saturn has Titan and Enceladus. The ocean can reach up to 30% of the mass of these moons, although it isn't clear whether these oceans are covered with a thick crust of ice. But we've discovered quite a few full-fledged ocean planets. This is because the conditions in which these planets may exist are very specific. For example, this planet should be somewhere 6 to 8 times larger than the Earth. If it's smaller, it'll have a rocky surface, but if it's bigger, it'll turn into a gas giant. At the same time, it must be in the habitable zone of its star. A little further, and the planet immediately turns into an icy giant or a cold super-Earth. So yeah, these guys are very picky. We first started exploring these planets back in the 1970s. However, since then, we found only a couple of them, but they're still very interesting. The first planet is Gliese 1214b. It was the very first ocean planet that we discovered. Initially, the scientists noticed only a small dim dot. This dot turned out to be the red dwarf star Gliese 1214, an unremarkable, completely ordinary star that's 5 times smaller than our Sun and 300 times dimmer. Scientists wouldn't worry about it at all, but back in 2009, they noticed that this star had one single planet, and this planet turned out to be quite strange. This super-Earth was 2.5 times bigger than our Earth and 6.5 times heavier, but at the same time, it had a very, very small density and about the same gravity as our planet. In other words, there were almost no rocks and metals on it, but it wasn't a gas giant either. So there was only one option left. It was covered in water and ice. And that's how we discovered the first ocean planet. Well, actually, we can only assume that it consists of water. That's what the mathematical calculations say. In reality, this planet is quite confusing. It's difficult to explore, and so far, scientists haven't been able to find anything there. No hydrogen, no helium, no water, nada. That's because the outer layer of the atmosphere of this planet is very dense, and it perfectly hides its composition. But even so, it's probably a water world. Gliese 1214b is very close to its star. It's only 0.014 astronomical units away, which is less than the distance between the Moon and us. The year there lasts about 36 hours, and the temperatures, to put it mildly, are just wild. Scientists suggest that the average temperature there can reach 250 to 535 degrees Fahrenheit. Woo, that's hot. Remember the creepy description from the beginning? Well, actually, spending time on Gliese 1214b would be a little different, more like swimming in a steam boiler. Because of such gigantic temperatures, the ocean on the surface will be constantly in a state close to boiling without actually reaching it. So, imagine that you're descending to the surface of this planet, flying through clouds of steam, and then you suddenly find yourself in the water. What? But when did it happen? Well, that's because the boundary between steam and water on Gliese 1214b will be very blurred. Of course, you won't be able to swim to the bottom of this ocean, but most likely, this bottom is covered with a very thick layer of so-called hot ice. It's like regular ice, but it doesn't really care about the laws of physics, so it just doesn't melt even at gigantic temperatures. And the thickness of this ice can reach as much as 3,000 miles. So that's it for the creepy Gliese 1214b, and not an Airbnb in sight. Now, although we can't 100% guarantee that it's a water world, we still have another candidate for this position. A newly discovered planet called TOI 1452b. This planet, located in the Dragon constellation, is almost 100 light-years away from us. It was discovered using the TESS telescope by a group of researchers from the University of Montreal. This planet also belongs to the class of super-Earths. It's 7 times larger than our planet, but 48 times heavier. Again, all this is at a very low density. Because of this, scientists have suggested that almost the entire planet consists of a giant ocean. Here, we were a little luckier. This world won't be just a giant puddle and some thick ice. On this planet, there's probably a rocky surface deep under the water, just like in a typical ocean. Don't get too excited though. This ocean will certainly be very different from what we're used to. TOI 1452b also orbits a small red dwarf. And not even one, but two at once. At the same time, if the previous planet was close to its sun, then this one, on the contrary, is very, very far away. It's 2.5 times farther from its stars than Pluto is from the sun. And it moves at great speed. A year there lasts only 11 days. But we still don't know many things about this planet. We'll probably get some new information when scientists observe it from the James Webb Telescope. Well, that's it. Wait, did you expect something else? All right, I know the question that bothers you the most. Can there be life? Well, this is a difficult question. We all know that water means life, and besides, these planets are in the habitable zones of their stars. So, potentially, yes, there might be life. Not some full-fledged civilizations, of course, but bacteria, fish, and some creepy giant monsters. I mean, why not? However, this is very unlikely. Water alone isn't enough to create life, even though it's very important. There should also be some microelements and some minerals. And unfortunately, for most water planets, the composition will only consist of water and very thick ice. There won't be any minerals there. But don't give up. There's still some probability. First of all, there are meteorites and comets. They can bring the necessary minerals to the planet. The more often they crash into it, the higher the probability that they'll bring something like this into the ocean and thus create life. Secondly, TOI 1452b actually has these minerals. Yes, we don't know how deep the rocky bottom is located there. But if it exists, then surely something could have originated there. Let's hope that new research with powerful telescopes will allow us to find out the truth. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll be able to visit such a planet ourselves.
We've discovered Kepler 22b, a small exoplanet in the Cygnus constellation. Seems like nothing important, right? But it's actually a big deal. This is the first planet located in the habitable zone that was found by the Kepler telescope. In other words, there may be water on this planet, and if there's water, there may be life. Kepler 22b can become our new potential home. So let's take a closer look at it. Actually, discovering new planets is not easy at all. Not all of them can be seen through our super cool telescopes, even the almighty Hubble. Sometimes, the stars are so small and dim that it's really hard to find them on a map. The same thing happened with Kepler 22. In such cases, scientists have to use a special method. First, they take a bunch of photos of the star in different periods of time. Then, they look at them and think, are there any dark dots on this star somewhere? And if they find one, that might be a planet. These photos actually help us to discover some very important stuff. Like, first of all, this planet exists. Secondly, here is its size, radius, and proximity to the star. And finally, will we be able to live there? Now we know that Kepler 22b is very similar to our planet and could potentially become a second Earth. It's also very close to us, only 635 light-years away. Yeah, it's about 3 quadrillion miles, but this is one of the closest options. Kepler 22, the star of Kepler 22b, is a yellow dwarf. It's very, very similar to our Sun. The same size, the same radius, even the age is almost the same, 4 billion years. The difference is only in luminosity. It's about 20% dimmer than the Sun. So, no matter how much you strain your eyes, you won't see this star in the night sky. The planet Kepler 22b is about 2.4 times larger than our Earth, and that's pretty good. More radius means more potential water and space to live. Although going from one city to another would take a while. It's scary to even imagine a 3-day-long plane flight. We don't know the exact mass of this planet,
but scientists think it's bigger than Earth's. Actually, the mass of Kepler 22b can be up to 36 times greater than that of our planet. What does it mean? Vigorous gravity. If the planet is 36 times heavier than Earth, then gravity there will be about 6 times stronger. Can you barely lift 20 pounds of potatoes? Try 120. Not to mention that you yourself can become much heavier on that planet. You'll have to get incredibly pumped up just to walk there. You have to literally turn yourself into a bodybuilder just to get to work. The worst thing is that with such gravity, it'd be incredibly difficult for plants to survive there. They'd need at least a little freedom to rise up from the ground. And animals. Our dogs and cats would have to turn into little balls of muscle to survive there. But if this planet has its own animals or other inhabitants, we can roughly imagine what they may look like. They probably have a lot of legs to make moving easier. They aren't really tall, but they're very massive and extremely strong. Muscular giant spiders? Could be worse, I guess. The good news is that this is all unconfirmed information. If we're very lucky, and gravity there turns out to be just a bit stronger than Earth's, then, of course, it'll be much easier to live there. The next thing we know about Kepler 22b is that it's about 15% closer to its star than we are to the Sun. If Kepler 22b existed in our solar system, it would be located somewhere between Earth and Venus. Does that mean we're all going to burn? No, silly. As I mentioned before, the star Kepler 22 is pretty cold, just some 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why we can assume that the temperatures on Kepler 22b will be about the same as we have on Earth. If the planet orbits its star the same way Earth orbits the Sun, which we don't actually know, Kepler 22b can rotate around its star on its side, like, for example, Uranus. What? Didn't you know Uranus is actually lying on its side? Also, look at its rings. Yes, Uranus also has rings, like Saturn, but they're vertical. The universe is truly a mysterious place. So, if Kepler 22b is really something like that, then the weather on the planet will be, to put it mildly, not very good. Incredibly cold winters will be regularly followed by hot summers. And, just like with tidally locked planets, we'd be able to live more or less comfortably only on the narrow piece of land between these two crazy sides. Let's hope that this is not the case and the planet rotates normally. But it's not all that bad. Studies show that there may be an ocean on Kepler 22b. You already know that water means life, but in this case, it's also a big plus because a planet covered by an ocean always has more stable temperatures. The water absorbs some of the heat and distributes it evenly across the planet. The hot parts cool down, and the icy ones warm up. By the way, that's exactly what happened to Earth billions of years ago. When our planet started getting its first little puddles, our beloved moon helped these puddles to spread all over the planet. Thanks to this, a burning horror that used to be our Earth turned into a cute little ball full of life. So, if Kepler 22b has water but no atmosphere, scientists think that the average temperature there could be around 12 degrees Fahrenheit. But if there's also an Earth-like atmosphere, then the temperature can reach 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be nice. And finally, 1 year there is equal to 290 Earth days, about 9 months. The planet has no natural satellites, so unfortunately, we'd have to say goodbye to a beautiful view of the moon. On the bright side, we'd probably be able to see the sun as a distant little star. We could admire it in the night sky, remembering our home, while not hiding from giant spiders. And this is all that we know at the moment. Unfortunately, it's quite difficult to explore such planets, so there's a lot of very important data that we don't know. For example, what kind of planet is this anyway? Yep, we're missing the most important information about Kepler 22b. We don't know if it's a rocky planet or not. And if not, then all the previously mentioned information means nothing. It may turn out to be a gas planet, or a planet covered with gas but with a solid core, like Neptune, or a water world covered with a giant ocean. In this case, it better be a water planet. Then at least we could build some kind of underwater city there. We could filter the water and eat fish until we evolve into an amphibious species. Does it even count as evolution if we go back to our roots? Scientists, however, think that Kepler 22b may turn out to be a Neptune-like planet. Some astronomers have even assigned the planet to a category of mini-Neptunes. Yes, this is a real planetary category, but this hasn't been proven yet. But even if, fortunately for us, Kepler 22b turns out to be a rocky planet, we still don't know what the atmosphere is like there. Does it exist at all? What if it turns out to be something like the atmosphere of Venus, which is more toxic than your ex? Then we'd have to dig deep underground to somehow survive on this planet. And then we'd have to come up with a heat source, because it's pretty cold underground. Yeah, let's hope this won't be the case. There are many possibilities with Kepler 22b. So far, we don't have a clear answer. But let's hope that scientists will find it before we load the first people into shuttles and send them to conquer Kepler 22b. That would be awkward if it turns out to be a gas planet, or something like that. Our universe is full of both amazing and terrifying things. You already know about quasars, black holes, dark matter, and so on. But how about the horrors of space that you haven't even heard of? Would you like to visit the most bizarre worlds in the universe? And it's not me who made this list, but NASA themselves. Welcome to the Galaxy of Horrors, NASA's awesome Halloween collection. Please join me on a journey to some planets and tell me which ones you would consider the most horrible. Buckle up. Our first destination is a gas giant called TRES 2b. It's located 750 light-years away from us. If we used a regular spaceship, it would take us about 10 million years to get there. TRES 2b orbits a yellow dwarf, a star similar to our Sun. It also weighs about 1.5 times more than Jupiter. So, what's so special about it? Well, if you're afraid of the dark, you definitely don't want to visit this place. It's the planet of eternal night, the darkest one of all the planets known to us. But it's not that far from its star, so why is that? The thing is, the surface of TRES 2b reflects light even worse than coal does. Because of this, it seems that there's no light at all. If you were flying across the surface of this planet, it would be like walking with a blindfold on your eyes. Oh wait, actually there is some light. An eerie deep red glow surrounds the surface of the planet. This glow is created by the burning atmosphere, which makes TRES 2b a scorching planet. The air there is even hotter than lava. Oh, but if you think that was bad, let me show you the next place of our horror journey. NASA wasn't beating about the bush while nicknaming this one. Now, we're not just talking about one planet, but 3 at once. They're also located quite far away, 2,300 light-years from the Sun. We would have reached them by ship in about 35 million years. All the planets are in the constellation Virgo, and each is extremely light, much lighter than the Earth. These 3 exoplanets are called Poltergeist, Dragger, and Phobator. Cool names, huh? It's because each of these planets is about to become a ghost soon. The thing is, they don't revolve around a star, but around a pulsar. Pulsars are rotating neutron stars with an extremely powerful magnetic field. In simple words, these are the stars that exploded one day. After the explosion, they usually emit such a powerful pulse that it causes the star to rotate at an unimaginable speed, several thousand rotations per second. At the same time, they constantly emit electromagnetic pulses that affect everything around them. So, you've probably already guessed what's happening with our zombie planets. They're slowly, gradually being destroyed under the gigantic influence of radiation. One day, they'll disappear without a trace. Ghost-like planets orbiting an undead star? Yeah, Zombie World is a fitting name. It's also not surprising that scientists nicknamed this pulsar Lich, despite the long official name. Well, at least these guys stick together on their final dance. This planet has a long name, so bear with me. HD 189733b. This gas giant is 65 light-years away from us. It would have taken around 1 million years to get there on a spaceship. This planet is slightly more massive than Jupiter and orbits its star, an orange dwarf, all alone. At first glance, it may seem friendly. A pleasant blue color and curls on the surface. Kind of resembles a summer sky or foam on sea waves, right? Oh, looks are very deceptive, my friend. This planet has a pleasant cobalt blue color due to the hazy blowtorched atmosphere. This atmosphere contains silicates that condense when heated. In other words, the clouds on this planet have rain made of glass. Yes, it rains hot glass shards here. Oh, and if that's not enough, there's a raging wind on the surface, which is moving at a speed of 5,400 miles per hour. Just to compare, the fastest wind on Earth had a speed of 254 miles per hour, about 20 times weaker. And because of this, hundreds of thousands of glass shards rush horizontally across the planet's surface at breakneck speed. I really don't envy anyone who would want to try to land there. By the way, this isn't the only example of strange rains in our universe. For example, it rains molten iron on the planet Dimidium. Or let's take so-called carbon planets. Their existence hasn't yet been proven, but if they do exist, there would be tons of black poisonous clouds, and it would rain pure gasoline and hot liquid asphalt. Oh, and also, raindrops would explode upon touching the surface. Nothing special. The next planet, though, is actually really strange. It didn't just revolve around its star, it lived inside the star. This cosmic miracle is called Koi 55b, or Kepler 70b. This planet is very far away from us, 4,000 light years. It would take about 70 million years on a spaceship. It's twice as light as Earth and fully rotates around its star in just a couple of hours. A long time ago, it was an ordinary Earth-like planet about the size of Jupiter. It was peacefully and calmly orbiting its red dwarf star, Koi 55. But everything changed about 700 million years ago. Perhaps you've heard that in a couple billion years, our sun will begin to expand into a huge star, absorbing everything in its path. Well, this is the fate of red dwarfs. Sooner or later, they increase, turning into incredibly hot blue giants. The same thing happened with Koi 55. This star began to increase in size and heat up in temperature, gradually turning into a blue-white giant. It was ready to devour its nearest planets. But Koi 55b didn't care about it. When the star reached it, this planet just settled inside. And moreover, after some time, it left its star, simply returning to the new orbit. How was that even possible? Life inside its star turned Koi 55b into a red-hot round stone. It's one of the hottest planets we've discovered so far. The temperature on it reaches 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hotter than the sun, which is, let me remind you, an actual star. And for some reason, it's still alive and lives as if nothing happened. Unfortunately, sooner or later, the planet will disappear anyway. It's slowly evaporating itself due to the incandescent atmosphere. But still, it somehow managed to survive the journey through the star, which isn't typical for regular planets, to put it mildly. I envy this willpower. However, not all planets are so lucky. Some are gradually being destroyed by their stars, and there is even an entire system among them. This last planet is a sad loner. It's located 870 light years away from us. The journey by ship to it would take about 25 million years. This planet is about 1.5 times more massive than Jupiter. This is a very sad, dark planet. A doomed gas giant, which is very similar to hot Jupiter, orbits its star all alone. At the same time, it's located so close to its star that its orbital period takes just 1 day. Of course, because of this proximity, the star gradually absorbs WASP-12b. The scorching heat of the star is slowly destroying and devouring the planet's atmosphere. The planet has only around 10 million years left. But what's more interesting, because of this stretching, WASP-12b acquired the shape of an egg. It doesn't even resemble an actual planet anymore. It's also very hot. The surface temperature of the gas giant reaches 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, a spectrograph of cosmic origin, or COS for short, found that the planet exchanges matter with its star. They're located so close that they give each other part of their chemical elements. This is a common phenomenon in closely spaced binary star systems, but this is the first time scientists have seen this in a star-planet relationship. What a unique system. To be honest, if I was guaranteed complete security, I'd be excited to visit at least some of them. What about you? Please let me know in the comments.
Scientists used to believe that the rocky planets of our solar system, like Earth, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, were created by a very rapid gravitational collapse of a cloud of dust. But in the 1960s, the Apollo space program made them change their opinion. After studying the moon's craters, astronomers discovered that they had formed about 4.5 billion years ago. The craters were created by numerous impacts of space objects, but then the number of collisions miraculously decreased. After scientists made this observation, the theory of accretion became popular again. Its main idea is that planets grow gradually, step by step. It happens like this. First, cosmic dust lumps together. With time, these tiny lumps turn into gravel. Gravel becomes small balls, then big balls, then tiny planets, also known as planetesimals. And finally, this dust ends up the size of the moon. As planetesimals become larger, their number decreases. As a result, the number of collisions between planetesimals drops too. It means there are fewer objects that can participate in the process of accretion. That's why it takes so long to build up a large planet. According to astronomers' calculations, more than 100 million years might pass between the formation of a space body 6 miles across and the time when it reaches the size of Earth. During the process of accretion, our planet went through some serious thermal events, and the consequences of these disasters directed its evolution. For example, large space objects slammed into the surface of the planet, producing incredible heat in its interior and thus melting the cosmic dust found there. It created something like a giant boiler located about 250 miles underground. I'm talking about the ocean of magma. It was active for millions of years, resulting in countless volcanic eruptions. When Earth was still very young, the heat caused by volcanism and lava escaping from the interior of the planet was intensified by the constant collisions with huge objects. Some of them could be the size of the moon, or maybe even Mars. Of course, no life formation was possible during that period. The Apollo program also encouraged scientists to try to reconstruct the development of the early days of our planet. Some time ago, such a study was believed to be impossible because the remnants of the early Earth had been destroyed by its own activity. But then, in the 1960s, isotope geology appeared and proved that it was possible. So geochemists started to apply this technique to figure out the evolution of Earth. They found out that the accretion of our planet led to its differentiation. First, the core was formed. This core was and still is the source of Earth's magnetic field. Then, it was time for the atmosphere to surround the planet. Despite the almost constant collisions with meteorites, Earth continued to grow and managed to retain its atmosphere. Later, continents emerged on the planet. One theory suggests that these giant landmasses are the only part of Earth's crust that hasn't been recycled and destroyed during the geothermal cycle fueled by the processes going on in the mantle. Geologic activity, which includes plate tectonics and erosion, has got rid of almost all ancient rocks. Very few pieces have survived this ruthless geologic machine. Luckily, the continents provide some form of memory. The records of early life can be read in their rocks. That may be the reason why researchers were able to find some zircon, a mineral usually found in continental rocks. Instead of getting dissolved during the erosion process, it's deposited in its particle form in sediment. It means that this mineral can survive for billions of years. For example, some pieces of zircon discovered in Western Australia were between 4.1 and 4.3 billion years old. They must have been witnesses to Earth's ancient crust.
25 light-years away from Earth, in the constellation Lyra, there's a young star, Vega. The brightest and one of the most famous. This star is twice the mass of our Sun. Vega is so brilliant, you can see it even at twilight when all the other stars disappear from the sky. Despite all the star's fame, astronomers have never seen a single planet orbiting Vega until recently. Researchers have been observing the star for a decade or so when they spotted a curious signal. It might be Vega's first world we'll know about. If it did exist, it'd be a marvelous place. The planet would likely orbit so close to its host star that one day on it would last around 2.5 Earth days. The world would be the size of Neptune, and this ice giant is 4 times wider than Earth. Or it might even be as large as Jupiter. But the most impressive thing about this potential planet would be its temperature. The place could turn out to be the second hottest world known to scientists. On its surface, it'd be as hot as 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. For comparison, the temperature on the surface of the hottest planet in the solar system, Venus, doesn't rise above 900 degrees Fahrenheit. The only place hotter than Vega's potential companion would be Kelt 9b. The temperatures on this exoplanet don't drop below 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Anyway, the candidate world would be closer to Vega than Mercury in our solar system is to the Sun. It could result in the giant planet puffing up like a balloon, and then even metals would melt in its scorching hot atmosphere. Unfortunately, the existence of the sizzling planet has yet to be confirmed. Astronomers think that the easiest way to prove it is by trying to spot the light emitted by the unusual planet. And since we're talking about planets, are there any worlds out there that resemble Earth? Astronomers have discovered and confirmed more than 4,000 exoplanets, but it's no secret that thousands of other candidates are still waiting for their turn to be detected. Of course, not all of these planets are like our Earth, but some are. For example, Gliese 667cc. This world is only 22 light-years away from Earth. Scientists aren't sure if the planet is rocky, but they know the place is more than 4 times as massive as our planet. The star of Gliese 667cc is a red dwarf. That's why it's much cooler than our Sun. So, the exoplanet is likely to be in its star's habitable zone. But this idea hasn't been confirmed yet. The Earth-like planet might be moving too close to the star. Then it can be regularly baked by its flames. Kepler 22b is much farther away than the previous world. If you wanted to reach that planet, you'd have to travel 600 light-years. This world, which is more than twice as large as the Earth, lies in the habitable zone of its host star. But it's unclear whether it's liquid, gaseous, or rocky. Kepler 69c is almost 70% bigger than our planet. It's also very, very far away, 2,700 light-years. It'd take you 54 million years to travel the distance that great in a modern spacecraft. Researchers aren't sure what Kepler 69c consists of, but they think it's likely to lie in the habitable zone. The planet's position in its solar system is like that of Venus and ours. But since the host star is only 80% as bright as the Sun, the planet shouldn't be affected by its heat that greatly. Kepler 452b is the most Earth-like planet astronomers have discovered so far. It resides 1,400 light-years away from our planet. Its host star is very similar to our Sun, and the planet, lying in its habitable zone, is 1.5 times the size of Earth. Scientists also think that Kepler 425b is likely to be a rocky world. Are any of these or other planets besides Earth suitable for life? There are 24 potentially super-habitable planets, and one of them met not one, but 2 criteria astronomers have for such worlds. KOI 5715.01 is 5.5 billion years old and around twice the size of Earth. It orbits an orange dwarf a bit less than 3,000 light-years away from our planet. Its surface temperature might be 4 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than that of Earth. But since the planet's atmosphere might have more heat-trapping gases, the place is likely to be super-habitable. Another potential super-habitable planet is KOI 5554.01. This world is a bit older than our planet, 6.5 billion years against our 4.5 billion. The exoplanet's size is likely to be the same as Earth's. The planet orbits its host star, a yellow dwarf, and the average temperature on its surface is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. What planets are visible from Earth? Mercury is the nearest to the Sun in our solar system, but since this planet is so close to the star, you can only see it just after sunrise, in the early morning, and at dusk. From up close, the place looks a bit like the good old moon. The planet doesn't have an atmosphere, and the temperatures on its surface are extreme, 800 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Venus is the second brightest celestial object out there after the Moon. It's one of our planet's closest neighbors. Also, it's the most similar to Earth in terms of gravity, size, mass, and average density. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see Venus's surface from Earth. A thick layer of clouds is securely hiding the planet. Jupiter can be either the third or fourth brightest object in the sky. It depends on Mars, which occasionally shines brighter than the gas giant. You can see Jupiter especially well in the summer. The gas giant's most famous feature is the Great Red Spot. That's an enormous storm that has been raging on the planet's surface for centuries. Even though the largest planet in the solar system looks like a solid sphere, you wouldn't be able to land on its surface. Jupiter is mainly made up of gases, mostly helium and hydrogen. Saturn is the second largest planet in the solar system. It's the last one of the 5 planets you can see from Earth with the unaided eye. Saturn is incredibly far from Earth, but its unique rings help you instantly recognize this colossal planet. It's a pity that Saturn's trademark feature is only visible in a telescope. By the way, more than 700 Earths would fit into Saturn. At the same time, the gas giant's density is a mere 1/8 of Earth's. This is why Saturn's mass is just 95 times greater than that of our planet. What planets in the solar system are closer to each other than the rest? Astronomers believe that Mercury is the closest to any other planet in the solar system. And that's quite shocking because, how about Venus? It orbits the Sun between Mercury and Earth. Isn't it supposed to be closer to our planet? Venus is indeed rather close to Earth, but only for a very short period in its orbit. The rest of the time, Venus is much farther away. But Mercury's orbit doesn't let the planet move too far away from the Sun, and it's closer to Earth more than 50% of the time. The same principle works with other planets too. Even gas giant Neptune is farther from Uranus than from Mercury. Most of the time, the 2 larger planets are on the opposite sides of the solar system. Their orbits sometimes do bring them very close to each other, but it happens very rarely. And how about planets outside the solar system? Astronomers have recently discovered 2 worlds traveling around the same star. Their orbits are often so close to each other that each planet looks like a huge full moon from the surface of the other. It occurs every 97 Earth days. These planets are about 1,200 light-years away from Earth. Their composition and size are different, but the distance between them is a mere 1.2 million miles. That's 5 times the distance between Earth and the Moon, and it's closer than any other planets astronomers know about. One of the newly found worlds is more than 4 times as massive as our Earth. It's likely to be rocky. The other is a gaseous planet the size of Neptune and almost 8 times as massive as our planet. Scientists haven't figured out yet how such dramatically different space bodies ended up in such similar orbits.
In April 2023, astronomers found something exciting: a runaway black hole. This thing is moving through the universe at an incredible speed, about 3.5 million miles per hour. It's 4.5 thousand times faster than the speed of sound. They found it accidentally. Researchers noticed that there was some weird straight line in Hubble images. After some digging, they realized there was a moving black hole. As it moves, it compresses the gas on its path, literally creating new stars along its journey. So it's leaving a beautiful, long trail of stars behind it. And when I say long, I mean it. Its tail is 200,000 light-years long, which is like the length of 2 Milky Ways. Turns out one end of this star trail connects to a distant small galaxy. This is probably where the black hole came from. Most likely there were 2 supermassive black holes whirling around each other. And then another galaxy came along with its own supermassive black hole and ejected one of the original ones like a mean kid, which is why it's called Runaway. There might be a 9th planet with the very original name, Planet 9, in our solar system. If it exists, it's probably somewhere far beyond Pluto. Astronomers think so because some rocky objects near Neptune move in a weird way as if they were influenced by the gravity of a large, unseen planet. Planet 9 might be a gas or ice giant 7 times the mass of Earth. One of the ideas is that it could have existed in our solar system, but then bumped into something huge and ended up with a crazy long orbit around our sun. If we actually discover it, it could change our understanding of the solar system. A new telescope is coming soon, equipped with the largest digital camera ever built, and it will start scanning the sky in 2025. Maybe it will finally spot this mysterious planet. Another awesome discovery was made in 2023. The James Webb Space Telescope found over 500 planet-like objects in the Orion Nebula. Some of them are roughly the mass of Jupiter, so they're literally called Jupiter mass binary objects, or jumbos. They just float out there with no stars, and they're not really stars or planets themselves. What's even crazier is that in about 42 pairs of them, the objects are orbiting each other, even though planets aren't supposed to do that. On top of that, such large objects shouldn't form and exist without a star at all. So now, astronomers are trying to explain this. Perhaps jumbos have formed in places where there was enough stuff for big planet-like objects, but not enough for stars? Or maybe all of them were ejected from their star systems for some reason. Who knows? But now we definitely need to study them. The black hole in the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, used to be super weird. Luckily, it didn't run away like that other one, but it was completely crazy in the past. Astronomers found two supermassive structures called the Fermi bubbles and Rosetta bubbles. They spanned about half the width of our entire galaxy, and they've been towering over the Milky Way for over 2 million years now. And scientists think that it's our black hole that created them. It seems like when it was at its peak activity, it had a wild, energetic eruption that lasted about 100,000 years. This event probably left these bubbles. In 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope took a striking, super detailed image of the so-called Herbig-Haro objects. These objects are called Herbig-Haro 46/47. They're basically young stars surrounded by beautiful patches of nebulosity. You can see the stars being surrounded by a disk of material that feeds them as they grow for millions of years. They're located at about 1,470 light-years away, but they're actually not our main topic of discussion. What's much more interesting is this weird thing right below them, a space structure that looks like a question mark. What is this thing? No one knows for sure. It has an orange-red color, which hints that it might be super distant, far from our galaxy, maybe even billions of light-years away. Some think that this strange question mark is probably the result of 2 or more galaxies merging together. One of them was a bit curved, so it's probably a distorted spiral galaxy. The curve might be the tails being stripped off as they spiral towards each other. The other one was rounder and smaller, like a regular spherical one. The gravity games never fail to amaze us. Astronomers started searching for extraterrestrial megastructures. They think that if there's another intelligent civilization out there, they could have built something incredibly huge to power their technology. For example, like Dyson spheres. Hypothetical structures around stars that use the star's energy as fuel. Astronomers analyzed some historical telescope data that detects infrared signals. They spotted some weird signals that could hint at the presence of these structures. In total, there are 7 such candidates right now. All of them are coming from red dwarf stars, which are redder, smaller, and less massive than the Sun. Another research institute found 53 potential candidates. They're still not sure what exactly causes these signals, but it could be not Dyson spheres, but some huge debris. It looks like there are some mysterious structures in the center of our galaxy. In 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope has taken a detailed picture of the Sagittarius C region. It's right near the center of the Milky Way. This image showed a dense area where stars are forming. There were many young stars and dark clouds that blocked the light from the stars behind them. That's a very packed place, with about 500,000 stars of different ages, sizes, and colors. This place is very chaotic and extreme. Now, scientists are using it to study star formation. But the weird part is that they noticed something else: the large region of ionized hydrogen. It looks like cyan in the image. This area is about 25 light-years long, surrounding the lower side of dense cloud. And it looks like there are some needle-like structures. They seem to be located randomly, and astronomers have no idea what they are. So now they have to study this in more detail. Astronomers have found a super rare massive galaxy. It's called JWST 7329, and it's absolutely ancient. Our entire universe is about 13.8 billion years old, but the stars in this galaxy seem to have formed around 13 billion years ago, so just around 800 million years after the Big Bang. Also, this venerable elder has 4 times more mass in stars than our Milky Way does today. This strange discovery challenges what we know about galaxy formation and the nature of dark matter. Everything we know tells us that galaxies shouldn't have formed so early. There shouldn't have been enough dark matter for that, but here we are. So, perhaps our models need some revision. There was an incredible astronomical event called AT 2021 LWX, which is also called Scary Barbie. It was an unbelievably bright burst of energy that happened on April 13, 2021. It's one of the most energetic space events ever observed. No galaxies or quasars were nearby. So what in the world happened? At first, astronomers thought that it was caused by a supermassive black hole pulling in a massive star. But after some studying, they think it's probably because a giant black hole had some crazy dinner. It probably ate a large amount of gas, possibly a giant molecular cloud. The titanic black hole in question is between 100 million and a billion times the mass of the Sun. This is one of the most massive known and active black holes. Astronomers found the oldest strand of the cosmic web ever seen. The cosmic web is what we call a huge structure of the universe that's made of interconnected filaments of galaxies and dark matter. They're like a framework for galaxies and other structures, playing a crucial role in their formation. The filament we're talking about is made up of 10 closely packed galaxies. It's unimaginably huge, stretching over 3 million light-years. And it looks like the newly discovered strand is very ancient. It occurred only 830 million years after the Big Bang. It's probably anchored by a luminous quasar. This discovery makes us question how exactly galaxies are formed and what exactly happened to our universe after the Big Bang.